This crime from 1931 starts in New York and ends thousands of miles away in Belfast with a murder and an execution, the 13th to occur at the Crumlin Road prison. The 28-year-old went to the gallows protesting his innocence concerning the brutal murder of a friend of his, and had the distinction of being the only Jewish American to suffer the ultimate judicial punishment in Northern Ireland. In early September, the body of a man later identified as Ahmed Musa was discovered in a remote stone-walled field at Seskin near Carrickfergus in County Antrim. The corpse had been stripped naked, and a woman's blue and white bathing cap had been pulled over his face. The victim had a gunshot wound to the head. The surrounding area and subsequent searches noted absence of blood at the murder scene, which led detectives to conclude Musa had been shot elsewhere and his body transported and dumped in the field. The macabre image of the bathing cap and the brutality of the killing made the case a sensation in the Irish and British press. The victim and the murderer initially remained a mystery, but a painstaking investigation by the police revealed the background to the events leading up to the killing. Both men at the centre of the story, Musa and the man later charged with his murder, Eddie Cullens, turned out to be workers associated with travelling shows, specifically a circus or sideshow attraction. The murder victim was identified as a Muslim called Ahmed Musa, who was a Turkish performer, while the murder suspect by the name of Eddie Cullens was a Jewish man born in the Eastern Mediterranean and became an American citizen, working on the fringes of show business. The two had been travelling together with circus acts, living an itinerant lifestyle, moving between English and Irish towns, which proved to be an important contextual detail in both the investigation and the trial. The story that later transpired told how Cullens and Musa knew each other. Both of them and two other Turkish men, Asim Redvan and Zaro Aga, were part of a syndicate involving a travelling circus sideshow, exhibiting Aga, who was an elderly man, who they billed as the world's oldest, with the claimed age of 156. Their plan was ultimately to exploit Aga. They had all met in New York and embarked on a European tour, which included England and Ireland. While Cullens was an American citizen, he was born in Shmyma in western Turkey, but had left with his family as a young boy for the United States. The quartet arrived in England and became a sideshow with the Bertram Mills travelling circus. While in Liverpool, it seems something happened for whatever reason, which led to the beginning of a plot to murder Musa. Both Cullens and Musa split from the other two and went to live at a house at Wavertree. The landlord told police how Cullens, who now called himself Bernard Berman, had negotiated the lease and was interested whether or not the garage floor was made of concrete. The landlord later told of how he had disturbed Cullens as he was digging inside the garage. At the subsequent trial, the Crown suggested that they believed he was digging a grave for Musa, and, because he was interrupted, he had to think of another way to dispose of the proposed victim. A few days later, the two men ended up in Ireland. Both Cullens and Musa arrived together in Belfast on Saturday the 29th of August and stayed at Ryan's Hotel at Donegal Quay. They also hired a car for short trips along the coast. A couple of days later, Cullens met two girls outside the post office in Royal Avenue, intending to pick up Musa on the way to Bangor. While Cullens was changing a puncture in one of the wheels of the car, he asked one of the girls to get him a towel which was in the pocket of the car door. It was then that a bathing cap fell out, and this incident would prove to be damning at the trial. After the initial journey to Bangor, there were other excursions until a crucial date, September the 2nd. The police followed up a lead that led to the teenage girl who had seen the distinctive blue and white bathing cap in the car of a man, later to be identified as Eddie Cullens, whom she had met and was about to join a trip to Derry before the body of Musa had been discovered. Patient inquiries and the intricate process of deduction, based on and centered around the bathing cap, enabled police to put together the pieces of circumstantial evidence that led to tracking down the suspect and eventually get a conviction. Cullens later said he returned to England without Musa and suggested that he had gone to meet a woman. But when the body was found at Seskin in September, police circulated the suspect's photograph and made inquiries among Mediterranean-origin circus workers. Cullens, meanwhile, had left Belfast on the Thursday and travelled back to England. The police tracked down his luggage in Leeds and discovered the holster for a .22 pistol of the type which fired the fatal bullet. Cullens was later arrested in London, with the police using the description supplied by the Northern Ireland Police. Fortunately for the authorities, it happened when Cullens asked a policeman for directions, after which he was returned to Northern Ireland for questioning. A chambermaid at the hotel where Cullens had been staying told police he had told her Musa had gone back to Turkey because he wanted to beat up the old man. Cullens was subsequently charged with the killing of Musa. Cullens claimed that one evening he and Musa took the owner of the hotel, Mr. Ryan, where they had been staying in Belfast, to the greyhound races at Celtic Park, and had left Musa in the car outside the stadium because he was uninterested in the event. When they later came out, Cullens claimed that Musa must have wandered off because he was no longer in the car. He said he returned to the hotel with Mr. Ryan and remained there for the rest of the night. Mr. Ryan, for his part, when later interviewed, denied this version of events, and both he and his wife swore that Cullens did not stay in the hotel that night. Mr. Ryan, during the trial, said he last saw Musa with Cullens in the car at the Albert Memorial in the city, and that he had gone to the dog racing alone. It was later revealed to the police that the Wednesday night after Musa went missing, that a farmer in Seskin, near Carrickfergus, identified Cullens as being the driver of a car asking for directions to Larne, which he encountered in a lane just outside the town, the night before the body was found nearby. On Thursday, the day after the farmer had encountered Cullens, a parcel of men's clothes, cut and blood-stained, were found on a doorstep at Church Lane in the centre of Belfast. On Friday, the dead body of the murder victim was found in a field at Seskin. The discovery was made after a horse pulling a milk cart refused to go any further on a nearby road. The victim, who had previously been shot through the head, was naked except for a woman's blue and white rubber bathing cap pulled over his face. The murder was similar to the Chicago-style gangster killings of the time and caused great public interest. The evidence against Cullens at the December three-day trial in Belfast Assizes Court, and the evidence was extremely circumstantial, which even the genius of the eminent defence counsel could not overcome. Investigators pointed to the connection between him and the victim, witnessed statements about the last known sightings, and reportedly to items and movements that tied Cullens to the victim in the days before the grim discovery. The defence emphasised physical improbabilities. Cullens' relatively small stature, reports said about 5'6" and roughly 140 pounds, versus Musa's larger and more athletic body, arguing it was implausible for Cullens alone to have moved and dumped the body in the stone-walled field without detection. The prosecution's presentation included the bathing cap, the timeline of Cullens' departures and returns, and witness testimony that placed him in proximity to Musa shortly before the victim's disappearance. Despite the defence's character witnesses and the assistance of solicitors provided through the local Jewish community and by Cullens' brother in the United States, the jury brought in a verdict of guilty and the sentence of death was pronounced, with the execution scheduled for January the 13th, 1932. Cullens claimed that he had American citizenship, which he felt could get him out of the predicament he found himself in, and various appeals for clemency that were submitted were ultimately unsuccessful. A motive for the killing was never established, and the court reports at the time show that the prosecution did not suggest one. The circumstantial evidence had been enough for the jury. Many people, as well as the press, have regularly pointed to the circumstantial nature of the conviction. He was executed by hanging at Crumlin Road Prison in Belfast on Friday the 13th of January, 1932, still protesting his innocence to the end. Rabbi Jacob Shaxter, who visited Cullens in prison, said afterwards that Cullens went to the scaffold with the deep conviction that his hands were clean and clear of the blood of this man. Cullens was buried in an unmarked grave in the prison yard, as was customary for executed prisoners. Questions about the fairness of the trial have come up from time to time over the years concerning the question of whether Cullens received fair justice by modern standards. The conviction rested on circumstantial evidence, and the defense raised plausible objections. The high level of press interest, some suggest, may have made it difficult for a jury to separate sensational reportage from sober assessment of the actual case. The unresolved debates about the sufficiency of proof and possible investigative shortcuts mean the case remains of interest not only as a criminal event, but as a study in how justice systems can be shaped by the social and media contexts of their day. It also poses legal questions about convictions based solely on circumstantial evidence, particularly in an era before modern forensic science. Cullens' story does not end there, as later efforts by members of the Jewish community in Belfast to identify and reinter the body in a Jewish cemetery have faced difficulties because the prison kept no conclusive grave identification records. His body is buried in ground adjoining the wall at the former prison site. At the time, there was the potential for all the bodies of the prisoners to be moved due to a proposed road being built through the site as part of a development master plan. In 2000, the royal prerogative of mercy was exercised to enable his removal, and that a ruling enabled the removal of all those interred in the prison grounds, should a relative wish to claim them for reburial. There is no record of a search in America for his relatives, and the last attempt by the Belfast Jewish Association was in 2005. Identifying which body is which at the back wall of the jail is not a simple task. There are some initials carved on the wall where the bodies are interred, but mostly it is the date by which they can be roughly located. In the case of Eddie Cullens, there are two possible bodies, but without a means to positively identify which is the American, and a relative to claim him, his stay behind the prison walls will continue at least for now.